Hey, this is Reverend Reagan. It's been a long time since I've made a video, but thought I'd come back and talk about some Vibram FiveFingers things following a 125-mile race on gravel roads that I did just this past week. I apologize for my voice. I've got a cold thanks to probably the lack of immune system following that race, but it's been a long time since I've been on here talking about Vibrams. Some things have changed in my world and in the world of minimal shoes, and so let's talk about it for a few minutes. I recently did the Heartland 125 out of Cassaday, Kansas, through the Flint Hills of Kansas, and ultimately ended up doing 136 miles because I missed a turn. I'll make a separate video all about that race. But what I wanted to talk about was, can you run a 100+ mile ultramarathon in Vibram FiveFingers and minimalist shoes? And the answer has always been yes. 8 years ago, I ran the Heartland 100, my first 100-mile gravel race. I've run a few more since then, several 100Ks, 50Ks, 50-milers on gravel, on old railroad track that is crushed limestone, on trails, and on roads. And in every race, I've worn my Vibram FiveFingers, one version or another, and really gotten along just fine. Now, usually at the end of 100 miles, my feet would, be pretty sore and hurt, but oftentimes we're in better shape than people wearing big maximal, Hokas and everything else. Well, it's been 8 years, and I've been running these gravel roads, trail races. And as I was preparing for the Heartland 125, one thing I noticed was my feet seemed to be acclimating to the gravel roads worse than they had in years past. I didn't know if it was my age, or now I think probably just the damage done to my feet from these races, because I would go out on gravel roads to try and keep running and getting my feet ready for the race, and kept hitting the same spot over and over again on a big rock and getting bruises under the ball of my foot or my heel because I just caught a rock wrong, and just had tons and tons of trouble. So here was my plan for running this race. My plan was always to run in a familiar model of Vibrams, which are the V-Trail, the original V-Trail. I've had these for years. I've run a few 100-milers and 100Ks in these shoes. I still wear the gray V-Trails oftentimes just to get around because they're my favorite that Vibram ever made. But these are Old Faithful. They fit well. They work great. The plan was to wear these. My backup was to have my V-Trail 2.0s, which I did a lot of training in. They're okay, but they fit smaller and tighter, and so over time my toes start to get cramped. So I didn't plan on running too far in these in the race, but I had them in case. The other thing I had were my old Trek Ascent. These actually are the shoes I ran my first Heartland 100 in, and I haven't worn them a ton since then, so they're actually in really good shape. And my feet did really well in that first 100-miler. Never changed my shoes, never changed my socks, didn't have blisters. My feet were sore and my toes were a little numb after the race for a while, but really did well. That was my plan. But because of, like I said, age and kind of how training was going, and a little bit of the fear of 25 more miles on gravel, as a backup, I got some Ultra Lone Peaks. And these Ultras, the idea is similar. They've got a really wide toe box. They've got zero drop, but they do have cushion. And I wanted these just in case, late in the race, my feet didn't hold up and I needed something else. Well, here's what happened. About 25 miles into the race, my feet were in excruciating pain. I happened to hit the wrong spots with some rocks, and I just felt my feet not holding up to the hard flint rocks underneath. So 25 miles in, I changed into my Ultras. First time I've ever run a race in regular non-toe shoes. Put on my Ultras, and I ran the rest of the race, 111 more miles in those Ultras. and they were wonderful. They cushioned my feet. They allowed me to still run with a short gait and the way I always run. Now, I did end up with some blisters on my toes because they roll around a little inside those shoes, which never happens in my Vibrams. But overall, I felt really good about how they ended. So what does that say? For me, I think what it says is I've done enough damage to my feet running these rocky, long distance races that I don't think I can hold up with Vibrams for 100 miles anymore. That doesn't mean you can't. You may be younger than me, you may not do as many, and honestly, trails or roads may be a whole lot better. But I've done way too many of these gravel road races because I live in the Midwest, and that's what's closest to me. And I think the damage has been done. So I'm not sure I can do any more of those with Vibrams completely. But I'm grateful for having the Ultras, appreciated the wide toe box. In fact, they're about the only shoes I could wear for several days after the race because they're the only shoes I can fit my feet into that were all swollen from running 136 plus miles. So anyway, that's where I'm at. How are you doing with running ultramarathons in your Vibrams? I've always been a big proponent of it. I've always tried to tell everybody it could be done. It may just be that eventually things might have to change for you, like I think they are for me. Anyway, that's where I'm at. And come find my other video that I'll make about the Heartland 125 if you want to learn more about that. Thanks for watching.